They demanded public education. In the 60s, they opened an office, started lobbying Congress. They were the ones to expose lead poisoning as a cause of brain damage. They helped create Medicaid. In the 70s, they helped create the SSI checks that everybody gets nowadays, not everybody, that people receive nowadays. They helped create special education, and they developed the very first community services. Now, when we talk about community services in Mississippi, we tend to think about home and community-based waivers, but Mississippi was the very last state in the country to get home community-based waiver, 1997. But in a large part of the country, they've been doing it since the 70s, and the ARC made that happen. In the 80s, they solidified the home community-based waiver for IDD, and in Mississippi, we have 5 waivers, but the very first one, and the best one, is the IDD waiver that we have. They created supportive employment, and they helped create early intervention. In the 90s, they led the fight for the ADA law passage. They helped expand the waivers. They began to work internationally. In the 2000s, they were part of the UN Convention on Disability Rights. Take a look at that online if you ever get the chance. It's not long, it's not tough. Last time I checked, you could still sign on to be a signatory on that UN convention. They helped create IDPA within the school systems. In the 2010s, they pushed Rosa's Law, which was the law that got some of those words we don't use anymore out of every federal document. They helped create the ABLE Act, which are in the Department of Rehabilitation, which are the folks that are the guardians of the ABLE Act of Mississippi. And if you don't already know about it, you need to. It literally, for the first time, helps people who live with disability not live in poverty. And it's an amazing tool. So if nobody has come to speak to you about ABLE yet, get them here. Get them to speak to you. There have been attempts over the last 3 or 4 years, especially, to block and cap the Medicaid waiver services. They worked very tirelessly on that, and they are a force to be reckoned with. If you go to the ARC of the United States webpage, they're going to have position statements. Here's what we believe about this that's been researched and vetted, and it's an opinion about lots of different things related to disability. You don't have to agree with them, but it's a very nice resource to see what you might think about employment or community inclusion, or lots of different things. They have national conferences, webinars, training. Sometimes they'll have opportunities to share money with local chapters. I noticed an ARC Census t-shirt today, and that was a national project that was distributed out to the states so that folks could help get people counted or to help count other people in the census. They will sometimes, I'm trying to think of some of the other things that they've done recently. They'll do sibling projects, they'll do specific educational projects, but if you stay tuned into your national ARC, there are oftentimes opportunities to fund some things that you might care about here. They have departments with attorneys, and they have siblings initiatives, they have communication, marketing, they've got a whole department just for chapter resources. They've got an advocacy, a rights department. You can speak to the lobbyists. They take what they do very seriously, and they have changed the way that the United States supports people with disabilities. I don't know where we would be without them. So some of the things that we do now at the state level, I say we have a state office. It's in Jackson. I work in the Gulfport office, but it's all the state office. And so we are just like you. The money is soft. There's no guaranteed money anywhere. And in fact, in every other state, the way that the state office operates is that the local chapters pay dues in, and they get their budget from the local chapters. We're the only ones that don't ask you for anything. But we scramble just like you do for for every penny that we have. Some things that we do are funded, some things that we do are important. So if the funding isn't important, we're going to do them regardless. One of the things we do every single day is advocacy. Somebody's going to walk in through the door, they're going to call, they're going to email. There is a crisis, and we need to help. That is one of those very important unfunded things, and that's, I believe, the core of everything that the ARC does is advocacy. We have a project called SPOT, Special Opportunities Transition, perhaps. It is an effort that is a partnership with the ARC and the Department of Mental Health, and every other Monday at our office in Jackson and on Zoom and on the phone, you'll find almost every state agency, every NCO, law enforcement, just a myriad of people who come together to staff the crises that happen in Mississippi that are falling through the cracks. The guy that's been to Whitfield 15 times already this year, the young man that was found chained to a radiator, you know, the person whose mama died last night and they have nowhere to go. And I don't even know how they handled those things before the ARC said we need to do something about it. Last year we staffed a little over 500 cases, and we stick with them until it's resolved, and we don't stop, and we don't ever leave them. Out of those 500 cases last year, 40% were people with autism. Why do you think that is? And I'm talking about any kind of crisis, mental health, crime, but 40% were autism last year. Any ideas?
Probably because autism has picked up. It's more of a public eye.
That may be, but think about what happened last year too. We're at the tail end of the pandemic, and how do folks with autism do best? In a structured environment, and you took school away, and you took programs away, and mom can't work because she's got to be home with you because there's no place else that you can be. Everything that helps you live your best life was different. And so there was a lot of violence, there was a lot of running away, you know, those kinds of things. And so it was really amazing that so many folks in crisis happen to have autism. We have a project called Supported Decision Making, and it's usually an alternative to guardianship. We have a few guardianships, but that's a last resort. So if you think about the people that we care about, who we're being advocates for, and they're being self-advocates, and you want everybody to make more of their own decisions. But decision making is experiential. You have to learn how to make decisions. And in our systems, we haven't always been very good at teaching people how to make decisions. You have to try and fail. When you and I try and fail, we get up, we hope nobody's noticed very much, and we move on and we learn from it. When our folks try and fail, they get a reputation. It's written down somewhere, and it's part of their history forever and ever. And so we have about 200 people in the state that we follow every month, some of them every day. They may not have anybody in their life who is unpaid. They may have outlived their family. Their family may be part of the problem. They may have transitioned from an institution out into the community, and they need some extra special guidance. There's lots of different reasons, and we vet them carefully. We don't try and step in the middle of anybody who's got a supportive family. We want to be that last resort. We're going to make sure that they're safe. We're going to attend their planning meetings. We're going to make sure that their birthday is recognized, that they have Christmas. We're going to go check on them face to face. When we first get to understand they need our services, the very first thing we're going to do is go sit and get to know them. There is no substitute for discovery, and you'll hear me say later that discovery is just a non-negotiable with us. It's real easy to read a file and think you know the person, but you just don't know a thing until you sat down and got to know them. And where I'm just thinking so many examples of that. For example, we had a guy in the hospital who experiences IBD, and nobody would serve him because he had AIDS, and nobody would take him on as a customer. And so it took sitting, getting to know him, getting to know his family, going through the records to find out there had been a mistake. He didn't have AIDS. He'd been taking the AIDS medicine for 20 years and didn't have AIDS. It was a clerical error. One of the things that I like to do when I'm training folks is I have a big Post-it note that I put on the wall, and I'm going to stamp a case, and I call her Betty. And on that just big Post-it note, I'm going to tell you every negative thing about Betty, because when you read a file, that's what people pay attention to, are the negative things. And so it's going to tell you that Betty drowned when she was 7 and has brain damage, and that Betty has trouble turning her brain off and has to wear special headphones sometimes, and that Betty has to live with a family member, and that Betty's sometimes non-compliant, and Betty has to work a job. And it just goes on and on about the things that you're likely to read in a case. So I'll go through that with a room full of people, and I'll say, okay, can Betty live independently? And they'll debate it back and forth, and well, maybe with a supervised living project or whatever. And once they've talked it all out, then I stop and I say, Betty is me. You know, Lisa drowned when she was 7, and CPR has left her with brain damage. And she does live with a family member. I've been married to him for 45 years, but I live with a family member, you know, and I do wear this special privilege. But I also have a couple of master's degrees, and I have good things to offer people. And so it's just a lesson to help people understand that reading a file does not teach you anything about who the person is. And so we try and work very hard at getting to know who you are before we insert ourselves into your life. We have a program called PI. PI stands for Prevention Includes Everyone. So a few years back, some of you might remember there was an initiative that happened in Mississippi called Bridge to Independence. We got federal dollars to move people from institutions out into the community. My role is to train all the people who did it. We moved in about a 7-year period, we moved 650 people out of nursing homes and institutions and group homes into community. What happened every once in a while that we did not see coming, nobody warned us, we weren't even looking for it, and that was addiction. Because we say that loneliness is the only real disability. And so you put somebody into a community, and even if they have really good supports, you know, that next door neighbor may not be the friend that you thought they were. Or somebody's handed you a smartphone with no safety training about what that smartphone can do and what it contains. Or you're bored and you hit the street and meet the wrong kinds of folks. And when there is addiction, especially Mississippi is all I can talk about, if you have an IQ of 70 or below, a treatment center will not touch you. They say you cannot benefit from treatment. And so we're touting all of the glories of getting people into the community, and then all of a sudden, you know, we're dealing with porn addiction and alcohol addiction and technology addiction and social media addiction, and all those substitutes for loneliness. And so we had to start convincing people that people really could benefit from treatment. We tried looking at special things and separate things, and it's not unusual to realize that we didn't even think special. We just needed to be included. And what we learned about treatment is that it just may take a little longer, and somebody may have to help you access the materials. And so we have been somewhat successful in convincing a number of treatment centers to accept folks. We have people that will follow them after the fact and make sure that they stay safe, sober, healthy, all those kinds of things. And we have a team of contracted experts who just happen to all use wheelchairs. I don't even know how that happened. But they use wheelchairs for different reasons. Maybe some of them were misusing something and got into a wreck. Or maybe they were injured by somebody else who was misusing drugs or alcohol. But they all come with a different perspective. And so they go out, they hit the schools, they hit community centers, they hit churches, they hit wherever people are gathered to talk about everything from drinking and driving to building and safe supports in your home and just building identity awareness in everything that they do. They also, some of the guys, some of the people on that team also partner with the Department of Rehab for a project called PROM. And PROM means please return on Monday. And so that is a sobriety promise that they try and get from high schoolers around prom time. And they usually try and come just before it's time for prom and say, you know, here's what can happen to you and here's what happened to me. And we want you to come home safely. So lots of good partnerships everywhere. We do personal outcome measures. Those are quality assurance checks on institutions, group homes, different kinds of services. Those of you who know me for a long time know that my passion is direct support. And so we still offer online training that teaches folks how to support people with disabilities. We train MDRS. We train about 15,000 people a year in Mississippi, and over the years we've completed almost 3 million lessons just in Mississippi. Not how to take care of, how to support, so there's a very big difference. And all of the stuff we have comes from what we call University Centers of Excellence. So we have a University of Minnesota that takes care of our frontline supervision, management, and all IDD options. We have UC California and San Francisco who takes care of personal care, physical challenges, and aging. We have UMass Boston who does supported employment. And then we have Temple University that handles all of our behavioral health stuff. So we're able to pick from about 500 different lessons to meet whatever the requirements are of that particular service or organization, and we build a curriculum to be offered online, and they're able to go forth and do things. This year, the ARC began for the very first time ever in Mississippi, and we were the last ones. We now have an IDD Provider Association. And that's what I was doing in Jackson yesterday, was meeting with them. So the IDD providers in our state are coming together. They want to be one voice to the legislature. They want to be one voice to Medicaid. They want to pick the challenges that are difficult but important and come together and work on them as a team. And I think it's going to be hugely successful. It's only about 6 months old so far, and just watch and learn because they're gonna change our systems. We have a partnership called Select with the Department of Mental Health to help families who are maybe hesitant about their family members moving to a lesser degree of institutionalization. So we might be talking about, say, regional center to group home, regional center home, group home, group home to community. There are a lot of folks who lovingly placed their family members in institutions 30, 40, 50 years ago. There wasn't anything. There weren't any choices. There are lots of choices now. And so it's our role to just help educate them as to what to expect, what the choices are. We want to keep them empowered. We're not trying to make decisions for anybody, but we want them to make informed decisions. So we've been working on that. We still transition people from nursing homes using the elderly and disabled waiver. We have a technology partnership with MDRS and their Project START. We do a conference every year, and we work pretty closely with that department at MDRS. We do Archangels, as you know, to make sure people have Christmas. That usually involves about 180 people that we're buying Christmas for. And it's a match. We'll match a family with somebody who needs Christmas. We'll get information so they can know more about that person and what they like and sizes and a little about what their life is like, so that those presents are personal. We encourage them to wrap them themselves, send a note, send a picture of their family, and I have one example. A lady in my church wanted to do something at Christmas, and so I connected her with a woman in an assisted living facility 100 miles away. And so not only was Christmas great, they're now pen pals, and they write back and forth every week, and she's driven that 100 miles twice to meet that woman who happens to have IDD. And so good things can happen with those kinds of efforts. All things DSP, I could talk to you all day about that. As you know, the shortages are critical and dangerous and ongoing. Let's see, we're in the middle right now. This is a little known fact that's pretty odd to me, but I wasn't born here. Private nonprofit advocacy organizations are expected to raise their their core dollars, their unrestricted dollars with bingo parlors. You may all know that. I never knew that. So on Jerry Clower Boulevard in Yosa City, Mississippi, we have a bingo parlor. For a couple of decades, we have rented an old grocery store to do that. And we've just bought a very nice new building. We're relocating over to that new building. We'll own that building soon. We own all of our other buildings already. And we'll be able to do a really good job of that. And there are an amazing amount of rules around it. You have to satisfy the Gaming Commission and the Secretary of State. It's very carefully watched, but that's how we can afford to pay me to come to Tupelo, Mississippi. We need to find a speaker somewhere. We are represented on dozens of boards around the state and locally and nationwide, trying to make change and to advocate for folks with disabilities. And the work just continues, it never ends. And we have just sort of a few rules that we go by. And one I already told you about, that discovery, there's just no substitute for knowing the person. Another one you're probably familiar with is not about me without me. If you're gonna talk about my life, I better be in that room, choice, we talk about choice, we talk flippantly about choice, and choice is what everybody wants. It's really tough to get in Mississippi right now. One option is no choice. Two options are just a dilemma, this or this. We need really lots of options. We fought with that with Bridged Independence. You're supposed to go tour places to live and think about, the town that you would most likely want to be in, and what, let's pick 3 jobs to choose from. And real life is really that you're going to take the place to live that you can get, and hope that it works out. And if it doesn't, we're going to try and find something. I mean, that's how we do it too. That's how everybody does it. That's real life. So choice is always what we aim for, but it can be tough sometimes. We use relationships to get things done. We don't start with drawing a line in the sand anywhere. Nobody in Mississippi has any money, but we got our friends. And any one of us can pick up the phone and call somebody at MDRS, at the Department of Mental Health, at the governor's office, no matter where it is. Those folks usually pick up the phone and they will talk to you. And that's very, very rare. We are unique. We were talking, Cross, thank you. We were talking before lunch, and he was telling me how he's changed his major and that his mission is in finding purpose for people, and that's huge. I think that if you think about it, sometimes the mistakes we make are in over-serving people or taking away their purpose. We're pretty good at making sure that people are safe and clean and healthy and fed, but without purpose. You all are here because you have a purpose. And so everybody that you know, regardless of disability, they need to be able to define that purpose. Is it, it's not only being a good son or daughter, is it being a good Christian? Is it being a good community member? Is it being a good example? Is it being a good worker? We all identify, and that's always been an issue in IDD, because when you and I introduce ourselves to somebody, we tend to introduce ourselves based on our purpose and our relationships. Hi, I'm so-and-so, I'm a son, I'm a daughter, I'm a teacher, I'm a mom, I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, whatever it is. That's how you identify yourself, and those are all purposes. So how do we ask the folks that we care so much about to identify themselves? We have to help them understand what their purpose is. We talk about how it may be my job, but it's your life. I get to go home with you today. I'm one of the few folks at the ARC that don't have an IDD or a close family member. I have brain injury, but that's not the same. And so I'm here because it's where I'm supposed to be. And I figured that out the very first day I moved to Mississippi. But I still get to go home at the end of the day. So I have to be very respectful of the fact that it's my job, but it's your life. Be kind. You know what? Be kind costs no money. No money. I can't tell you how many family members will sit and just boo-hoo because for the first time somebody showed up at their door. Somebody called them back. Somebody actually did what they said they were going to do, and that has never happened to them before. Be kind and listen. If you can't do anything else, you'll change them just from those 2 days. Both absolutely free. And I said it before, and I'll say it again, loneliness is the only real disability. You know, I was thinking of an example about that, and this very day, I got a call a few weeks ago from an uncle, and his niece was living with him, and he has had a health issue, and he's had to move to a nursing home. So his niece, who's 49 years old and has Down syndrome, and she's in the apartment by herself, and she's very independent. That part is perfectly fine. But she doesn't have money to pay the rent because people meet her online and take advantage of her, and she sends them all of her money. So she has no money. So Sunday, she's being evicted from the apartment, but I've found her an emergency place to go. I've rounded up resources and worked out over the last 3 weeks, and she turns them all down because that guy's coming to get her on Sunday, and they're going to live happily ever after. And this is the 5th one like this, and they don't, and they continue to take her money. And so those are decisions not based on disability; those are decisions based on loneliness. And so we haven't figured out yet how to address just the exploitation that happens online. I've talked to different federal agencies, and they're on it about kids. They're not on it about vulnerable adults. And so we work a lot on that. What have we learned lately? What's happening right now? I talked about DSP shortages are at life and death levels. In other states, the National Guard is in regional centers changing diapers because there's nobody to work. And it's not just DSPs, of course it's industry-wide, but it is really, the pandemic didn't cause the shortage, but it accelerated it to a crisis level. That demographic of person who usually did our work is changing, it's shrinking. The need is growing. The baby boomers are taking up a lot of the resources of people, and they pay better than we do. And so there's maybe a positive thing that will come out of the pandemic is that maybe some real changes will take place, maybe more funding will come. I happen to know there's some funding on the way for some of the providers, and some of those DSPs are going to get some surprises pretty soon. But I think that we have some real challenges. One of the things has been that direct support professionals, and on the physical disability side, personal care attendants, they are not counted as a job. The Department of Labor does not recognize them. We have fought with the Department of Labor for years. On a call with them the other day, they said, well, maybe in our rotation, we'll take a look at that in about 8 years. But they say nobody can make a living at being a PCA or a DSP. But 5 million people are making a living at it. They may have to work 2 or 3 jobs, but they're out there. More than police officers, more than teachers. And so a couple of bills were introduced in Congress this year to force the Department of Labor to recognize DSPs, because if you recognize them, you count them, you fund them, you watch trends, you develop initiatives, you pay attention. And right now they're listed as orderlies, home health aides, just totally wrong. So we recently did some home visits, and this is my first time ever doing virtual home visits. You're talking to all our elected officials in Washington, but you're doing it on a Zoom call. It's really interesting. Just helping them build awareness about the DSP situation and the need for money and the need for the Department of Labor to do the right thing. I'll say it again, able accounts. If you've not been trained in able accounts, get somebody to come and talk to you about that. Billy Taylor at MDRS can come. Other people can come. Yes, ma'am?
On our website, there is an archived recording of Billy discussing and describing how you apply what the ABLE Act does. So wonderful little brochure for the PTI that I give out on our archive training. He did it last October, so it's that current.
Yes.
We're working on it, but it's there.
Perfect. It's easy, it's cheap. Special needs trusts are great. They're very expensive. This runs about $3 a month. And you have instant access to your assets and resources. It's very nice. The 1915I is making a difference. So we talked about home community waiver. which waiver means you're waiving the requirement that you have to move to an institution, because that's how Medicaid works. Medicaid works on a medical model. And so, a few years ago, we came up in Mississippi with the 1959 option. What that means is, it's a little bit of the waiver. It's on the Medicaid state plan of service, meaning if I have a Medicaid card and I'm appropriate for the service, I'm entitled to that right now, and I don't have to wait. And I can get some supported employment, I can get some supported living, and I can get some day programs. It's the first time we've had something for the thousands of people who are waiting to get to the IDD waiver, which the list is 12 years long right now that you have to wait. And so it is not federally funded. It's funded with your state dollars, which is why it is limited. But we're just so happy that there is something that yes, sir.
Many times in the past, I've had some difficulty regarding my mother's family, some of the hoops we've had to jump through. One of the things we rely on is on one side.
Yes.
Is that severely violated what's
Yes, you have our most of planning and development districts in every part of the state, and every nursing home, assisted living centers that have our residents that operate through those planning and development districts. So they can be great problem solvers, they can be advocates, and they are ready to reach out to you if you have issues, because they can do the system, and they will get to the market. Another thing that we know now is that addiction is equal opportunity. We talked about that. At the ARC, founded on IDD, but we don't necessarily only focus anymore on IDD, at least here in Mississippi. We tend to think of it in terms of people who need support. That could be somebody who's aging, somebody with mental health issues. And, you know, when I started in this business, I was told that you couldn't have IDD and a mental health issue, either one or the other. And we know that is absolutely not true. And in fact, that folks with IDD experience a much greater level of dual diagnosis, including mental health. There is a new project coming down the road from the Department of Mental Health. They're about to invest a huge amount of money on a 3-year project called Project STAR. And they're going to be building all the different levels of mental health crisis specific to IDD. So hospitalization, to transition, to emergency respite, to just all different kinds. And they're going to be situating. It's either Project STAR or START, but I think it's START. It's a model out of the University of New Hampshire, and Tennessee has been doing it for about 10 years, and it is amazing. And they've gotten it funded, and it's going to spend a lot of money, and it's going to be exactly what we need. Nationally, less than 100 large institutions are left. By 2025, they think that almost all will be gone or at least small. And then with all of that said, there's much to be done. We need fiscal intermediaries in our state. When people cannot manage their own money, what usually happens right now is the provider is the manager of that money. I don't want a provider managing my money, but that's oftentimes the only choice that you have. Maybe if you're trying to live your life without a provider and you don't have any supports, we try Catholic Charities, we try Chancery clerk systems, that sort of thing. There are businesses that are in the business of handling people's money professionally and inexpensively, and I'd love to see some of them come into Mississippi and make that a more honest system. There's been a lot of talk about a new rate study. It's hard to get services because it's hard to pay people. They're looking at possibly, they met with Medicaid this week, and they're looking at possibly just tweaking the rate study that we have and just doing an adjustment rather than a whole rewrite, and hopefully we can get some of those salaries up. We need more providers in more communities. We have a list just got put together with about 250 places in Mississippi where service is happening for folks with IDD. And I celebrate 250, this is awesome, this is wonderful. That's group homes and day programs and all that. And then I looked at it a little closer, and 59 out of the 82 counties had either nothing or one day program. And so while 250 sounds good, we need programs everywhere, in every county and of every type, and so we need to work on that. We need legislation to support some things such as the supportive decision-making and alternatives to guardianship. We need host homes. It's been on the menu item for the home community-based waiver for 15 years, and we've never had a single host home. It's adult foster care. It's a way for somebody to join somebody else's family, and you think about all the things that solves. We need better transitioning from school. School can be a cliff. You've invested time and money in 21 years in somebody. Records don't follow them. There's been not a very good plan for transitioning. When I used to run services, I'd get a call on Monday morning after graduation, Friday afternoon. Okay, come get my son. Ma'am, there's a 12-year wait. And we're not doing a good job with that. And then we need more crisis and mental health services for folks with IDD, because yeah, they have the same emotional issues that we do. So my challenge to you today as I wrap up is, what is your focus? What is your purpose as a chapter of the arc? It doesn't have to be ours. You guys get to decide who you're going to be when you grow up. And we never grow up, but you know what I'm saying. You know, is it self-advocacy and peer support? I tried to think of a few things that some of the chapters have done. In Hattiesburg, if you use an electric wheelchair, you go to any park and there's a charging station for electric wheelchairs that will encourage people to go out in the community because they'll know they're not going to get stuck and they can get back home. We now have accessible shelters because of ARC chapters. We have law enforcement training because of ARC chapters. We have additional providers because of ARC chapters. We need people to reach out to new families, young families, families with babies. We need local legislative representation and advocacy. Did you know Delbert Bozeman has a grandchild with a developmental disability? You know, do you know that there are places where those day programs will insist that everybody running for office come to the day program and give them their stump speech. They will help people register to vote. They will make sure that those voting places are accessible. You know, what is it? Only you guys can decide what it is because it's your community and your situation is unique. But I would encourage you to figure out who you are and who you want to be, and then write it down. When you write it down, now there's responsibility. You got to get a plan, and you got to figure it out. So I look forward to hearing what your purpose and what your next steps are going to be, because we all need to know what we are, who we are, and what we're supposed to do. So that's it, and I just appreciate your attention, and thank you for inviting me.